sleek, stylish, and very, very comfortable. That's the new Audi A5 Convertible for you. And if we had to review a car in one word, then that one word would be desirable. Here's our review of this beautiful machine from the house of Audi. So if you're planning to sell your car before considering this one, then you should definitely consider Cars24. Visit any of their 50 branches across India and sell your car at the best price. Not only this, Cars24 will instantly transfer the money into your bank account and will also take care of all the paperwork, including the RC transfer. So do check out Cars24 today. Well, let's talk about the interior of the A5 Cabriolet, because it is a very special place to be in. Just like all other Audis, it is absolutely faultless, not only in terms of the design but also in terms of the materials, and even the smaller switches over here and all the buttons have a very nice and tactile feel, and really this cabin feels like it is built to last. Special mention has to be made about this wood over here. It really feels like it's carved out from a very high quality tree, and it really does feel like it belongs inside the cabin of a special car like the A5 Cabrio. Well, so how is sitting inside the cabin of the A5 Cabrio? To be honest, if you've ever had Narula's hot chocolate fudge, you'll get the same kind of satisfaction once you sit inside this car. It really is a sumptuous place to be sitting in. The seats are comfortable, there's plenty of place to keep your odds and ends, and there are plenty of features on this car to keep you happy. So yes, it will give you the same kind of satisfaction that the hot chocolate fudge gives you at Narula's. Well, apart from the Audi virtual cockpit theme, you also get this nice Mmi system over here from Audi, and the menus are really nice and easy to operate. In fact, it is at par with BMW's iDrive system when it comes to overall intuitiveness as well as ease of operation, and even the screen is nice and legible and definitely a lot ahead of the Mercedes complicated setup. Now this car, remember, is built on the A5 Saloon, which means that you also get two seats at the back, and I have to say the seats are good enough for those long highway trips for even people who are my height, but at the moment I'm not going to jump into them because it will make me look very clumsy. But yes, if you trust me, then believe me that the seats at the back have got plenty of place for those long highway trips for even the tallest of tall passengers. How is the A5 Cabriolet to drive? So let's find that out now. Well, one of the biggest causes of worry on a Cabrio car is the fact that the stiffness when compared to the regular sedan isn't as good. And I have to say that Audi has done a great job with the stiffness on this car, because they've used a lot of cross members, they've used stiffened up sills, door sills that is, and they've also used some components around the suspension setup to make the chassis feel a lot more rigid than it would on a regular Cabrio car. So stiffness isn't really a big negative on this car, because it is a very stiff chassis, and that is something that you'll realize every time you push this car into corners. There's absolutely no body flex, which is something that cars without a proper metal roof miss, but there is no issue like that on the A5 Cabriolet. Well, there's only one engine option at the moment on this car, and that is a 2-liter diesel engine. It's a tried and tested engine in the Audi range, and it develops about 190 bhp of power, and all that power is sent to all four wheels, because remember, this is a quattro drive car, so all four wheels get that power via a 7-speed dual clutch gearbox. And it's a very common setup on most Audi cars, and it's a great setup because the gearbox is really nice, and there's absolutely no lag between the time you hit the pedal here, if you want to use it manually, and the time that the gearbox actually shifts gears. So it is a very quick shifting gearbox as well. Now Audi claims a 0 to 100 time of just a shade over 7 seconds, and with our previous experiences with this engine, we believe that time. What Audi also claims is a fuel efficiency figure in excess of 17 kpl for this car, and again, going by our previous experiences with the A4 as well as some other cars in the range, that's something that we can believe that is true. At the moment, the onboard trip computer is showing us figures of about 11 and 12 kpl, but we have been, of course, really ripping this car since the morning, since we've been shooting it, so the computer over here could improve that figure by another 10 to 15%. Now the Cabrio isn't really a sporting car, it's not the best sports car out there, but it is a very good car for touring purposes. If you are someone who does a lot of high distance trips, then this is a great package, because if the weather is okay, you can of course drop the roof down, but even on a hot and summery day like it is today, you can easily sit inside this car and do speeds in excess of 100 and 110 kph all day long, and this car will not break a sweat because the suspension setup on this car is absolutely sublime. Yes, the comfort inside this car is brilliant. It simply glides over the worst of worst patched up roads, and those rumble strips as well as those expansion joints do not pose any issues for this car, because it simply glides over them without the occupants feeling any of those jolts inside this car. And as I just said, the suspension setup is more towards comfort rather than for outright sporty handling, and that's a good thing, because most people who buy Audis buy them for their sheer luxury as well as comfort. Now you can always choose Audi's drive select over here and change the settings for the overall dynamics of this car, but most people will usually keep it in the comfort setting, and that's a nice blend for you to keep it in, because you get a nice blend of agile handling as well as a comfortable ride. So how is the steering wheel on the Audi A5 Cabriolet? Well, to be honest, it is a steering wheel which offers you decent feedback and has good controls as well. It's not an overtly feel-some steering wheel, but that's true of most Audi cars, because remember, Audi builds its cars more towards the side of comfort and always errs on the side of comfort and luxury rather than on the side of sporty handling, and it's true with the A5 Cabrio as well. So that's not anything surprising. Neither does it feel overtly nervous when you're on the highway, and neither does it feel overtly involving when you're pushing it into those corners. So it is a nice balance of comfort as well as sporty handling. Well, one more thing which makes the A5 Cabrio a great cruiser is the fact that the insulation inside the cabin is absolutely brilliant. Now, for a car which has a soft top roof, this is something which is commendable, and Audi, it seems, has managed to really mute the engine, especially because they've used a lot of sound deadening material around the firewall of the engine block and especially the bonnet area. And what they've done with that is that the cabin over here feels really nice and isolated. There's hardly any noise or any roar coming in from the engine. Even when you're really revving this engine hard and you're driving in speeds of 100 kph or 120 kph on the highway, this car's cabin remains very quiet, and there's hardly any wind, tire or engine noise entering the cabin, and all that makes this a great car for those long distance cruises. So overall, what do I think about this car and what are my summary notes? Well, I think that Audi has really hit the ball out of the park with the A5 Cabriolet. Now, it might not be a sports car and it might not be a supercar, but this is a practical, luxurious, convertible car which really does make sense for a lot of buyers who live in places where the climate is always good. And even if you live in places like Delhi, where I'm shooting this car right now, this is a car that you can always keep in your garage and take it out for that weekend getaway or for that weekend trip, because not only is it practical as well as comfortable, it's also pretty fuel efficient and it's also remarkably refined. So overall, this is a car which I will give 90 out of 100 to, and give 4.5 stars out of 5 to Audi for making such an exceptional product. It really is one of the better cabrio cars out there in the Indian market. And what's more, because it is an Audi, it has a desirable badge. So if you decide to sell it off after 4 or 5 years, then you will also get very good residual values with this A5 Cabriolet. It's bye for now, and hope to see you soon.